Hello, folks. I'm going to try something a little bit challenging today. I am live both on YouTube and on Instagram. So, two different devices filming at the same time. I'm going to be doing a painting of this young woman named Shae. This is the second painting that I'm going to do in a row of her. Don't believe. Oh, I guess actually I do have a couple of viewers that have started. So let's see how this goes. This is the first time I'm doing my Tuesday night demo with my new webcam. So maybe hopefully the quality is a little bit better. On my Instagram channel, you should be able to see my palette as I work, but you don't see the reference. And on YouTube, you see the reference, but you don't get to see my palette. And so hopefully the sound is okay. I may have the microphone on a little bit too harshly, and that I can. Let me see if I can see the chat at the same time. I should be able to see it. It'll come up right here. Okay. So everything working so far. I'm just going to go ahead and start to indicate where things are. My best guess. Let's see how this goes. I'm really am multitasking. For those of you on Instagram, again, quickly, I am live on YouTube also. If you're curious to see the reference that I'm painting from on YouTube, you can see the that's AJ Alper on both YouTube and on Instagram. You can see my palette. So it depends on what you're most interested in. If you really want to see my color mixing, then I think Instagram may be the way to go tonight. And I have two different microphones. One's earbuds that are plugged into my phone. I have no idea how that's working. And I do have a microphone hooked up to my computer for the YouTube feed. Let me see. Okay, got a few people waving here on Instagram. So great. So maximizing my audience here. And this demo will be available on YouTube afterwards for on-demand viewing, I guess you would call that. I'm not sure this is the right brush to start with. I need something a little stiffer. Let's go with this larger flat, which is it's a bright actually, and it just says it's a medium, no size. That's what happens when you buy some cheap brushes at Michael's. You never know what you're getting. And the brush is actually okay, except that I found that the hairs start to fall out right away. Let's get some measuring in for the chin. It's closer to about here. The point in her cheek, right at her tip of her nose, that looks good. Bottom of the ear, a little bit further up, and then I can get a measurement of the ear is actually much higher up here. Okay, good to know. Let's just start to get some of the color in. I'm shifting my color mixing a little bit. I tend to lighten everything with white, and that shifts all the colors. Very cool. And now I'm starting to also use yellow to lighten the colors, and that will keep the colors a little more balanced as I work. I'm also trying to get a little bit more gray going and not so high intensity, just to get a better grounding in the sense of form. So get sort of that the tonalness action going, not dependent so much on color for describing form. Okay, so if anyone is following me on YouTube, let me see if I've gotten any comments yet. Don't think so. Just bringing that up on my screen now so I can see it. No comments on YouTube yet, which is fine. I was just trying to make sure everything was working. Have to say, if you have questions on Instagram, it's going to be a little bit hard for me to answer. Let me see. I'm just going back. No, it just looks like people waving, which is fine. Forgive me if you ask me a question and I don't see it because um, I'm a little bit in front of my phone, so I'm not able to see the screen that easily. And let's get a little bit of red in for the hair. And hopefully my sound levels are okay. I do get a little bit of a metering for the sound. I can see it doesn't look like it's bad, so hopefully it is okay. If anyone is watching me on YouTube, if you can tell me if the sound is horrible, deplorable, too soft, too distorted, whatever. I'm not sure what I can do about it, but if the sound is way too light, it may indicate that there is an issue, which I might be able to correct. Let's go a little bit cooler red in the hair here. And I'm going to need to darken this up as I go, but I'm just trying to get it indicated. Really just winging it tonight. Usually I spend a fair amount of more time measuring. Just going to just go ahead and block things in and remeasure. And like that. Okay. Like there, want to get where the earlobe is. Yep, so that's kind of like that. Got the darker hair. See if I can overcome the white that I already put down. Yeah, that's okay. And the shoulder height, something like that. Okay. And then I want to get a little bit of the tilt of the head. She's tilting a little bit forward. This is somewhere around there. And again, I want to keep on lightening with yellow. Make sure there's enough warmth in the flesh tones. So when I say lightening with yellow, both yellow and white are on my palette are light opaque colors. And so if I want to make a tint color, I want to tint a darker color, I can use both yellow or white to make it lighter. I can even use orange because the orange on my palette is semi-opaque. So if I mix that, let's say with a purple, I can lighten up that purple. Or if I mix it with a darker red, I can make that red a little bit lighter. Let's see. Starlight Raven on my YouTube broadcast asked me, "Just joined you now. Are you working in acrylic?" No, these are oils. I use Gamblin, almost primarily Gamblin oil paint. Like their consistency, and I like some other aspects about them, including the fact that they work to lower the toxicity of the paint, and they work really hard to modernize their colors so that they perform well and are cost effective. I use the artist quality, which is their top quality. They also have a line called 1980, which is a student quality paint, and they're far cheaper, but they also have additional colorants in them that make them not quite as strong, that they can go longer, and it makes it a little bit cheaper to manufacture, and that's why they're student quality. But they're actually very good paints for those for students who are just learning to color mix, and the artist colors maybe prove a little bit too strong to control. So, um, so tonight I'm working. I'm not doing quite as much measuring as I normally do. I'm just going straight into it, kind of eyeballing everything, and then I can adjust things as I go. Gonna get a measurement of the. Oops, I lost the top of her head here. Help! Throwing things around. Get a measurement of the top of her eye. Now, I put her eyebrow where her eye should be. So let's just turn that into her eye. And then I can put the eyebrow up here where it should go. You know, gotta be creative sometimes. But if that's right, then I got the base of her nose way too low. So let's just wipe this out and start again with that. I gotta get that very light and yellow now that I've gotten a lot of black in there. Okay, that's better. And I tend to go a little bit blue in the whites of the eye. That tends to be in photography where the whites aren't going to be a pure white in most cases. It's going to be a few values down, and blue tends to give me that sense. Sometimes the whites of the eyes go a little bit red or violet, and that's fine too. So this tells me the problem is that I had the top of my reference blocked, and so I was measuring from the wrong place. So got to move everything up, which is fine. So that's what I'm doing right now, is moving everything up. And that means her chin also is going to be higher. Definitely, yep. So I have her chin about here. Okay, that seems better. You gotta be able to adjust as you work, especially if you put something in the wrong place. Be able to quickly adjust the colors and the location to get things to work properly. So that means I also may have the hair over too far. So I need to be able to get to that other eye. So that's going to be, if this is one eye here, let's just say that's where it's supposed to be. I'll remeasure here. Oh, just really clumsy today. Let me see if I'm just checking questions on Instagram quickly. I may have to throw my glasses on because they put it on little white type on your live feedback as the background, so it does make it a little hard to read the text. Let me see. Looks like it says, looking good, thanks for sharing. Okay, that's the only comment so far, besides mostly waves, and that's fine. Like I said, it's going to be a little hard for me to answer questions on my Instagram live feed just because I can't really see the screen that easily. Okay, and let's make her jaw a little more square. Wipe out the paint a little bit. And I have a warm, dark shadow underneath her chin. And then it gets a little darker on the side along her neck. Something like that. Then we have her shoulder going straight across, and then the bra strap's going to be somewhere around here and there. Just putting it down as sort of reference points. And I'm going to go a little bit bluish in the background here. It's a good excuse to bring in a little bit of color against her cool red hair. Gets a little bit warmer in the highlights, but let's go kind of black and red together here. Just kind of blocking it in just to cover over some of that, the white of the panel. I use gesso panels to paint on, not canvas. The panels that I'm using are Speedball Mona Lisa gessoed panels. They're very inexpensive on Dick Blick. If you buy them online, it's about $1.50 for an 8x10, which is far cheaper than any ampersand panels, like ampersand gesso board. Tends to run about $7-8 for an 8x10 panel. And I decided early on that I was going to try to minimize the cost of my panels, because it would make, if I'm doing tons of painting, lots of practice, then it would make it feel like the panels are a little less precious. Let's measure here again. Yep, I want that eye lower, which is fine. It feels like it needs to be lower, and that means I can bring that eyebrow down a little bit more. Okay, so now that I got some color down, I can start to see things in relationship to the reference. I can just look at the reference and then paint, like looking at it while not taking my eyes off of it, and then be putting it down on the panel at the same time. That really helps me get the feel of it. It's almost like if you're writing on a piece of paper but you're not looking at the piece of paper, or you're playing a piano and you're not looking at the keyboard. It's something a little bit like that. You can still kind of keep your place, but you can see what the reference is doing at the same time. Anyway, and I know some people that, and I do this too, I flick my eyes back and forth between the panel and the reference, or the canvas and the reference, so that I can see the differences much more easily. To get a lot lighter here. And just going almost with pure white where I need to lighten things up. And I'm not really worried about how clean the brush strokes are or accuracy. I'm just trying to get the general sense of location of things. Later I can come back and refine a bit, but just want to keep it nice and loose. This will keep the paint flowing and the paint strokes interesting. And it also keeps it from getting too precious. You might be really tempted to dive in and really try to paint each part perfectly as you go, and sometimes that gets in the way. Okay, now I just want to indicate where that other eye is. Close to that side. Yep. Got that really strong black there. Iris, something like that. Then I have a strong red, orange on the lower lid is the word I'm looking for. And there's a light coming up. And then it's lighter the cheek near the nose. So I'm just going to come in with a little more white. And let's get the shadow that's on the far side of the nose. Something like that. It's pretty quiet tonight, but that's okay. And things are still going. My Instagram feed should go, I think it only allows me an hour, um, my live Instagram. And I'm kind of curious whether I can do a consecutive hour right after, because it does take me about 2 hours to do the demo. And we'll see if my Instagram crowd has the patience to hang with me for that long, but we'll see. And like I said, there's a little bit of experiment doing a simulcast in the sense that I'm doing the demo for both Instagram and YouTube at the same time. Yep. Don't be afraid to take some bolder strokes with the brush until you get what you want. It's blocking in that shadow, and then there's a stronger yellow light right underneath the nose. Let's get a little more white in there. And a hint of red. Then back to the yellow and white over here. Really working a little bit thicker tonight, which is good. I've been being tentative and going too thin most of the time. Let's bring the corner of that eye down a little bit more to remember it's in perspective, so it needs to read in that right direction. And I have to broaden this light area of the cheek a little bit more. Okay, and she does have a mouth, so let's see. Just getting a lighter pink initially just to feel my way around here. You see a hint of her teeth, and then you got a dark interior of the mouth. That's actually a little bit lower. So if I look at it, I get the axis in the face. Look at my reference. Everything's lined up. So I have to make sure that I keep my parts along the right axis there. Let's bring that shadow of the nose a little bit further out. And then this nostril comes down a little bit lower. So I'm just doing some adjustments as I'm working so that things will fall into place as I get closer to a finish. And I need to come closer here to the chin. Light on her face is coming it's coming at eye level for us, or maybe a little bit below. Let me see. You can tell if you look in the reflection in her eyes, you can see where the light source is. There's two light sources, both coming from the same general direction. One's higher and one's lower. That gives you an idea of where it is. And so when you see it on the nose, you see one smaller light higher and then the second one that's lower. And that's our key light, that second one. Okay, and let's soften up the colors here a little bit. Let's get a little more white and pink going. And for the medium, I am using safflower oil and Gamsol. Gamsol is more of a thinner. It's not a true medium. Um, I've just started using safflower oil more often, and that has worked well for me. It keeps the colors nice and juicy. Don't slows down the drying time a little bit, where Gamsol tends to speed up the drying time. And I like to have a little bit more drying time to work with. I see Shae has joined us. She's the reference model of this, and she's watching on YouTube. Says, "Hi AJ, you inspired me to buy some paints and canvases. Thank you for making me beautiful." Oh, you're welcome. And thanks for watching. And also thank you for the beautiful reference photo, of course. The, some of these photos of you, you're quite stunning, so hopefully I can do you justice. Okay, and just adjusting some of these colors here. Really trying to keep a lot of yellow in the paint so that it doesn't go too cool on me, which has sort of been my habit, just relying on the white way too much. Okay, so starting to see it slowly. Let's trim that nostril a little bit, and I need to get a little bit cleaner red in the tip of the nose. Typically the cheeks, the tip of the nose will be redder than the rest of the face. That seems kind of obvious when I say it, but I think a lot of people kind of miss that, and they'll paint sort of the same hue all over. And so the forehead tends to be a little bit more orange, and around the mouth tends to be yellow greener. And so just oh, and so it's just some people call it the Neapolitan effect. We're going like Neapolitan ice cream, where you got kind of colored stripes going across the face. So if you can think about it, orange on the top, red in the middle, and then yellow green around the mouth, around the jaw, I should say. And that kind of gives you that sort of the basic base color influence in the skin tones. Obviously, the skin tones are also affected by the color of the light and um, any makeup that might be on. Let's soften up the eyeshadow a little bit. So if I think about it, the lower lid is facing downward, and then really there's only a color change for the most part because of the eyeshadow. And then right away you have a plane that's facing upward, and that's kind of an orange, more of an orange color that we're getting right next to the eyelid. and then very quickly we're getting a stronger light where it's turning towards the light, and then we have the highlight coming in there. And so if those are all painted the right colors and in the right place, then you start to get the sense that the form is turning. I also want to put in a little bit darker the the hollow of the cheek here to get the sense that that's the underside of the cheek. I can soften that a little bit so I can get that form to turn a little bit too. That actually comes down a little bit lower here. Not really going too strong yet with some of those differences. And I don't quite have the right shape of the chin yet, but it'll get there eventually. Helps if I put the right color down though, so we don't have to do too much extra work. It's a little bit better. And let's see if I can improve the shape of the nostril here too. Comes down a little bit lower and over just a little bit. A bit redder there, and then it goes a little bit darker, more purple and gray on the outside here. Okay, that's starting to look a little bit better. Let's pull this corner up higher. And sneak in a little bit of light here. And D.D. Ziegler on YouTube says that the sound is good. Okay, I'm going to take his word for it, or her word for it, don't know which. Yep, I thought I was painting a cool white there, cool light, and it was quite red. So sometimes I just need to wash off my brush, wipe it with a towel, and start mixing with clean color on a new spot on my palette to get the color that I want. Okay, let's try this again with more white, less blue. I think this is close to the color I want. Okay, I think that looks better. Then we got kind of orangey red right in the corner there. And then the cheek comes around like this. It's cut off a little, there's a little bit of shadow of the hair there, and then the cheek comes down. Let's see if I can get the mouth shape a little bit better. Comes up a little bit here, and then down. The teeth over a little. Okay, that's a little better. And then the bottom lip, the red's more intense. That's good. I'm just going to indicate where the highlight is. Something like that. And it gets lighter. A bit of yellow and white here on the far side of the mouth. So this is just, observing, looking, comparing colors that are up against each other to see which way the the change of color is. And on the outside of the cheek, it goes a little bit darker and redder. Let's get that in. We got a little bit of eyebrow showing here. There. Okay, so the face is starting to take shape slowly. Just getting it fixed from my early mismeasurings. Okay, so this all looks like, if I look at the chin and the cheek and the jaw, it all looks like it's one thing. But then I have to start to break it down a little bit and try to separate the forms. So the chin, the cheek, so the chin is in front, so there is a little bit of change in the contour right there, and the cheek sticks out a little bit there with the shadow of the cheek coming down in front of it. And then I have all the smaller forms around the mouth here. It does, help to look for certain things to be able to paint it. Otherwise, the tendency is, until you really understand what you're seeing, the tendency is to not paint it that well. So it just takes observing, but a little bit of understanding of what the form is doing in a particular spot. Okay, and I need to go a little bit darker above the tip of the nose, because that is where it's actually moving away from the light. Since we just had determined that our key light is actually a little bit below the line of sight. And I need a lot of yellow here, going very light. And I'm going to move the iris over a little bit here with a fair amount of light of the eye that comes underneath. And let's get a little bit of light that's in the corner here. Start to indicate it. Don't have to be, like I said, don't have to be that exact yet. I'm just looking over for the overall movement of lights and darks. Trying to get my placement of the facial features right. Get kind of the right expression. Okay, let's fix, be a little bit more exacting about this nostril here. It's sort of a prominent feature in the face, and I want it to read correctly. Let's get a little bit of red in there, so that it feels like it is the interior of that. And then I went a really nice light pink here on the septum of the nose. Okay, just slowing it down a little bit so I can be more exacting. And I want a little bit of yellow in that highlight there. That light does follow on up through. And I want to get the same thing here. There's a touch of purple in that red right here. It's not very strong, so I need to make sure it's gray enough. It's a little bit better. And a touch of lighter yellow here. And then we just got a sliver of the nostril there. And a little bit of a touch of light that you see next to it. Okay. Then we got the light of the cheek, and then that goes into shadow. I think I've cut up the tip of her nose a little bit too much with that nostril there. And I'm going to make the line of her nose a little more vertical and bring it much closer to that eye. The tear duct is this little dark accent there. That comes across. And I'm going to add a little bit more white in the corner of her eye there. And let's see if I can get more of her iris showing. Her eye is just a little bit more open here. And I'm just going to indicate where those highlights are. One there. It's a bit too light. Let's try that again. I really just want a little bit of thick paint right on the tip of the brush so I can just do almost a dot. And then I want a nice, stronger one a little bit lower. And then I need to make her iris just a bit wider. Something like that. Hopefully I'm close to having it the right place, so don't have to repaint it, but if I do, I do. It's not the end of the world. Didn't take me that long to paint it. It won't take me that long to repaint it. Okay. And I need to make this line a little bit tighter. And then it'll come out a little bit further out, right that spot. To remember that this is a shadow right here that's cutting into her cheek. And let's pull the tip of her nose down just slightly. Something like that, and then over. Okay. And again, need to straighten a little bit the line of her nose. Just making it a little more vertical. I guess the tendency for me is to make it less vertical. And the hair is coming down in front there a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to move that line of the nose over just a bit. Just small adjustments until it feels right. I may go too far one way and then have to bring it back, but that's fine. Okay, that's better. Which means that highlight that I have going down the bridge of her nose also has to move over. And a little bit of orange right here. And feels like I have to move this eye over. Yep. So I'm going to bring everything over a little bit. It's fine. Doesn't take but a minute to really, if you don't get too timid with the paint, to move things. Okay, we're getting close to our hour on Instagram. We've got about 10 minutes left. And then I will have to restart the live if it cuts me off. I've only done Instagram live a couple of times about a year ago, and maybe they've changed it since they started doing the Instagram TV, but I'm not sure. So I'll just try to keep an eye on it. Okay, let's get another measurement there. That is still not over far enough, but let's just keep on moving it a little bit. Here's a good thing to see. The corner of the nose comes up right in line with where the iris starts. Something like that. Probably should be using a little bit bigger brush here. Maybe I'll switch to my flat. I grabbed that detail brush to paint those highlights in the eyes, and then, as it often happens, I forget to let go of it. It feels so safe, having this smaller brush. But it can get you into trouble. That's all I'm saying. Have the hair come down a little faster here. Nice rich red here for the hair, and then it goes really dark underneath the ear. And it can be a little bit lighter on the neck underneath the chin, and then we get much lighter here. Oops. Like I said, we get much lighter on the neck. Shoulder. the chest is much redder than her neck. Let's make sure our hair is dark enough in here. Okay, just slowly looking for differences between the reference and the painting. Just adjusting them as I go. If you want something to look more like something else, then you change the things that are different. It's kind of like a math equation. And if you change enough things that are different, then eventually it will look exactly the same or close to facsimile. At some point, though, I want it to be a painting and not a photo, so I am careful to make sure that it retains the quality of the paint that I'm looking for. And running low on white, so may have to refresh that. Okay, let me see. It looks like I have a few comments here on Instagram I may have missed. Let me see. From Italy, can't sleep. Thanks for painting something. Thanks for painting, Shae. Wow, this is beautiful, AJ. Thank you. I wish I could see this better. Um, do I have my reading glasses close by? I have one with the lens popped out, but I think the other one I dragged into the other room. Okay, I can sort of close one eye. Sergio says, oh, I can't read that one. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong thing. How do you go about that to make sure that you don't exaggerate certain features? You just try to make changes more subtly. Is it more complicated to paint someone you know? Yeah, especially if they're watching. Um, Let me see. Betty asks, what medium are you using? How do you not get all muddy? Love watching you paint. I use both Gamsol and safflower oil. And the way to keep it from getting muddy is paint. Um, don't mix all of the colors together that are next to each other. Try to keep a separation between one color and the color next to it. And really, muddiness is more like a lack of contrast between one area and the next. Let me see. Interesting, looking good. Thank you for sharing, says Michael, I guess that is. Wow, a lot of comments here. A lot of joins. The sound is fine, don't worry, this must have been in the beginning. Okay, let me see. Let's go back down to the bottom. Sorry for all the shaking and the little bit of a break here. Just trying to find the questions. It's more complicated to paint someone. Okay, you already asked that. Getting there. Hold on. Hello from Italy. Can't sleep. Thanks for the painting show. Okay, got that one. That was from Bright Art. And I Love Murals says, love your work. Tiffany says, hello from Virginia Beach. Love your portraits. Rachel says, love the live demos. Have to head out since I have to be up early. Hope to see more. And Ron says, it's amazing. Gabachu says, love how fast you paint. And that's about it. Okay, I'm still live. It's over. It's almost been an hour. We'll see what happens, if it will kick me off. If it does, then I'll just start anew and with on Instagram. Okay, I definitely need to get out some white because I've used up all my white. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Okay, I'm grabbing some radiant white. I use sometimes radiant and sometimes titanium white. They're the same pigment with different binders. The radiant white uses safflower oil as a binder, and the titanium white is linseed oil, and linseed oil has a little bit more of a yellow cast to it, so it tends to be warmer. The safflower oil is cooler, so the radiant white is a cooler white, even though it's the same pigment but different binder. If that makes any sense to you all. And it's a little bit why I use, instead of linseed oil as a medium, I'm using safflower oil, because I do want it to keep it a little bit on the more transparent, cooler side. The linseed oil tends to have a yellowing effect, and then yellows a little bit more with age. So I'm not really keen on the painting changing colors over time. Don't really love that idea. And also, some varnishes can have that effect too. So you have to be a little bit careful with what you put into the paint. Lots of artists will use something like a Japan dryer to get the painting to dry faster, but that would cause yellowing and possibly cracking over time. So newer mediums, dryers tend to be a little bit more plastic, and so have that don't crack quite as much. But you can get a painting to crack if you paint thin washes over thickly drying paint. That there's that rule, thick over thin, where you want to paint thinner and then thicker over the top of it, so that um, so that the paintings won't crack, and that some people say it's so the paintings are healthy. Okay, I need to go more pure white in here and improve the shape of her lower lip a little bit. The far edge is just a little bit higher, and then this sweeps in a little bit lower on this side. Okay, I think that looks about right. Okay, let me see. Oh, look, it says I have a minute remaining on Instagram. So in a minute, I'm going to do a restart live if it lets me. If not, then um, you can come over to YouTube and continue to watch me paint. We'll see. You may want to come over to YouTube anyway. You'll get a little bit of a different view, and I can also see when you ask me questions, I can actually read it more easily. So if you have a burning question, then I will answer it in YouTube. Okay, I'm missing some of the light of her eye over here. Okay, just almost going for a dark green here. I'm not worrying about the intermediate colors in the iris at this moment. Really squinting down so I can see the bigger general shapes. Made her lashes a little bit too long on that side. let's simplify this over here. There we go. And let's simplify some of the shapes here too, just kind of rubbing them down a little bit. Don't want to do too much blending. It doesn't quite have the right look to it, especially for the style of painting that I'm doing. So you want to try to come in with fresh paint each time. It's okay to do a little bit if you want to just knock some of the color back and some of the texture back, but if you want to try to get a little bit more of a blend, then you really do want to come in with more paint that's sort of the intermediate colors that will kind of visually mix more than physically mix the paint together. Okay, and I lost some of the brightness there. Yellow and white. Okay, here's a good example. I have one color here and another color next to it. Instead of blending, I can look really hard to see that that's just a light pink in between those two colors. And if I mix it right and then I put it down, and that didn't go quite light enough, so I can go right in between those two new colors and put another color there. And that's a way of bringing those together but without blending. Again, I can keep on with that same concept, keep on painting intermediate colors in between and just really color mix to find those colors. And then you're also developing a surface too, which is more tactile, and that will also help bring give you more texture on the surface, which will help you see the dimension of the painting a little bit better. Okay, and need to come a little bit lower in the mouth there. And then this comes forward. This comes down. Okay, let's my video ended. I'm going to share that, save it, and let us go again. Let's see if it'll let me do it. Your live video will be active soon. Okay, and hello, I'm live again on Instagram. Sorry for the little bit 5-minute delay there. I was not paying attention when I should have. And so now I'm live again on Instagram and on YouTube. Okay. So I can see on my display of, at least for my YouTube video, that the colors are a little bit washed out. Maybe I can adjust them a little bit with my camera. Let me see. I can go a little bit less bright. I can change the white balance a little bit. that's a little more accurate to what I'm seeing here. Not quite as dark. Let's see if I can fix that. A little more contrast. No, a little less contrast. Hold on. There we go. Darker. Okay. Something like that. Looks okay. And the reds in the dark aren't quite as dark as I put them right there, but at least the color is a little bit closer to what I'm seeing in the painting as seeing it in person. Terminology is not really helping me here. In person, live, in the camera, there's lots of ways to kind of understand what you're looking at here. Okay. Oh yeah. So I got some people back here on Instagram. Great. Oh, let me see. I have 5 people on Instagram. Okay, great. And I have 12 on YouTube. I don't know if there's anyone who's watching both at the same time. But anyway. Let me see. May have missed a comment or two. My sister's here. She says, so great, AJ. Ahmed says, great. Steve Flinger says, what brand of paint are you using and what brand of brushes as well? Also, what type of bristles are they? Do you use more firm, stiff bristle brushes or do you like softer brushes? Okay, a lot of questions there, but I will try to answer these as I'm painting as not to lose any time here. So I use Gamblin paint primarily, and there's a few reasons for that. One is I think they're a great company, and they also produce really nice quality artist quality paint, or I should say artist line of paint. And I also like their general philosophy of the company. They try to make the best paint using all the technologies available to come out with a line of paint that performs well for today's artists. And they do some archival kind of paints also, and those are mostly for museums and restorers. And so they understand a lot of the chemistry in the paint, but they don't always try to use traditional colors. What they want to do is give the artist the greatest possible flexibility by trying to produce colors that are similar to pigments that used to exist or used to be used, instead of using colors that might be fugitive or more toxic. They look for less toxic versions of those, and so I like that whole idea. Works well for me, and they also recommend using more modern colors that are produced chemically instead of mining them, because those colors tend to be less expensive, more intense, and more light fast, and less toxic. So all of those things really make me happier. For example, a quinacridone red, which is a modern color, is much more intense, and an naphtha red, than any of the cadmium colors. So gives me more flexibility in color mixing to be able to get much richer colors. Let's make her jawline a little softer. Eventually I'll get there. There's something that's feeling a little bit too long about her face. Either have the bottom of the jaw too low, or the top or her eyes too high. Now that's in the right place. Her eye is actually a little bit on the low side, but that's okay. So things seem to be about right. So it must be the shape of the jaw that's throwing me off a little bit. That's fine. Okay, let's see. Let's keep on working on the shape of that nose. Um, Let me see. Need those glasses again. Where did I put them? Um, Odd Sienna says, "Why don't you paint paintings on larger scale canvases?" I do like to paint to scale, and and so and I really like faces. I like being close up to faces. I like to play off of the whole selfie culture too, which is kind of a more intimate um, look at people. So instead of painting a whole figure or half a figure, I'd much rather get much tighter to the face. And so, and I can do quicker kind of sketch exercises with smaller canvases, smaller panels, and allows me to grow faster as an artist because it gives me much more experience in a shorter period of time than working on larger, more developed pieces. Just moving that edge of her chin over a little bit, bringing some of that red down lower. And it looks like her lips just need to move over a little bit too. Something like that. Yep. And let's just make that shadow a little punchier right here. And a little bit better there in the philtrum of her nose. Okay, and then Steve had some additional questions about brushes. So I buy the cheapest brushes that I can find that will hold up. Michaels has lots of sales on brushes, and so does Dick Blick. I do like um, Royal Langnickel brushes and Princeton brushes, and sometimes the Creative Mark brushes um, that are on. I don't know if it's can't remember if it's Dick Blick or Cheap Joe's. Sometimes those are okay, and I don't tend to buy sable brushes. They're very expensive, but I will buy um, bristle brushes. They're natural pig hair, and I try to find them as inexpensively as possible because I'm rather abusive to my brushes. And let's see if I can find that in between color here. Just need to go a bit darker and redder. So black with a little bit of purple and red in here. And I'm just going right over that edge to try to get it to be softer. That's a little bit better. Let's change the angle of the cheek a little bit here. And I'm going to pull it in a little bit closer. I think is where I'm running into problems. And then pull this edge down slightly lower. Okay, so just slowly adjusting the cheek, the jawline, until it starts to look right. Um, and I, instead of sable, if I want a soft brush, there's lots of synthetic brushes on the market that do a perfectly good job. And I use different stiffness brushes to do different things. Often, if I want to do a lot of blending, I'll get a lot of that alla prima effect and see the mark of the brush better. Then I'll use a stiffer, like a bristle brush. If I want a much smoother effect, or I want to paint right on top of um, paint that's still wet, then I'll use a softer brush, and that'll allow me to paint without digging into the lower level layers of paint. So, and then I'll have different shaped heads, different profile brushes for doing a few different things. Sometimes I want a more chiseled look, and I'll use a bright or a flat. And sometimes I want more like dart shapes, like in the hair, and I'll use a filbert brush. Okay, I want a little bit of lighter reflected light in here just to get that edge to turn a little bit more. See if I can get that light that's hitting up here too. And a little bit of red here across where the edge of the red that comes across naturally on the face here. And let's make sure we got her head tilted in enough, and so we got to open up her forehead a little bit to get the direction of her head a little bit better. Yeah. And then we got dark coming in right off of the canvas here, panel. Okay. It's starting to look like something slowly. Just deepening the red in her lips a little bit. Okay, remember the light's coming from below, so there's just a hint of shadow above her upper lip there. We got a little bit of touch of green that comes off the nostril and down here. It's got to be a little bit softer, but it gets the idea. And then I think the edge of her mouth is just going to be a little bit lower here. Just can adjust that easily enough, and then can redraw the dark, throwing in a little bit of purple here. I hope, Steve, that answered your question about brushes and about paint. If you're looking for a student grade paint, Gamblin also makes a line called 1980. Not sure if that's meant to be the year or has some other significance, but it does a pretty good job if you're a student and you're just learning how to mix paint and you don't want to spend too much money. Sorry, my voice started to go. So far, so good with the cam, with the video webcam. I don't have not having the drop offs that I was having before. Let me just look at my indicator. Looks like my connection is good, and um, yeah, everything looks good. Great. And let me see any other. Steve says, thanks for the in-depth answer. Cheers. Steve, do you sand and gesso canvas before painting? Looks like a smooth surface, or maybe wood panel. Sorry for all the questions, just learning. LOL. I use gessoed hardboard. Hardboard is something like a masonite, and but for artists tends to be acid free, or at least coated so that the acid in the panel doesn't doesn't affect the paint. The brand I use is Speedball Mona Lisa. You can find it on the Dick Blick website. Is the least expensive place to get it, and it does a really good job. I have to say that the gessoed surface of those panels are way too slick, and so I do put an additional layer of gesso down before I paint. Otherwise, the paint doesn't adhere well enough to the panel. So any cheap artist gesso will work in that regard to give more tooth and more absorption for the paint. And I don't do any sanding. I find just one thin layer of gesso is the right um, texture and absorption that I want, and I can get it done quickly. And so whenever I need a panel to paint on, I can quickly gesso it, and it takes about an hour to dry. I keep all my other panels on. They're still shrink wrapped from the delivery, and that tends to protect them a little bit better. Let's open up the forehead even more here, and then pull the hair down more vertically this way. Okay. Okay, and if I'm doing this right and getting the right turns in the right place, then it will feel like the face is pointing in the right direction. It's just little subtle changes that really can affect the overall direction of the face. So, like, reassert that highlight there. And I want to lighten up this yellow that's there too. And pull this over just slightly. Okay, now I have to actually start putting in some detail and accents for some of these things to read the way I want them to. Let you know what things actually are, instead of just colors that are one next to another. Okay, grab a detail brush to do some of that work. Okay, I'm just checking the Instagram feed, make sure I'm not missing anything. And Sienna says, oh, okay, cool, thanks. Do you always just use one paintbrush for the whole painting? No, I do switch it up a little bit, but sometimes I get comfortable with one brush. It means you do have to clean as you go. There are some artists that switch brushes for every color change, and that just takes a little bit too much concentration for me, and takes me a little bit out of my zone. So sometimes I just hang on to a brush and just stab away at it to go lighter into some spots here to help define the shadow area. Let's pull this ear forward a little bit here. Okay, so yes, it's time to do a bit of refining. See if we can get things to read properly. It's a really intense red in the tip of the ear. I'm going to try to get some of that. Okay, I got all quiet all of a sudden. Sorry about that. Steve says, yes, definitely answered my questions. We can't get Gamblin around where I am. I can only get Lucas oils, but I should order some Gamblin though. So, curious, are you in the United States or are you somewhere else that, because you should be able to order just about anything online if you're in the US. If you're in Australia or Canada or something like that, then I'm not so sure what you have access to. Okay, jaw, making that jaw a little bit too strong. And got to bring the back of the neck over a little bit. And then this side of the neck, I have to bring it over this way. Let's get that blue background going. Let's bring the shoulder up a little bit higher. Okay, Steve says I'm in Sycamus, British Columbia, Canada. I live in the middle of nowhere in the bush. LOL. The local art store won't carry any gambling for me. And there is a Michael's, but it's a 3 hour drive. They don't carry gambling anyway either, from where I live. You should be able to order in Canada from Dick Blick, which tends to have pretty good pricing. Not sure what they charge in terms of import tax, but I think there might be some online stores um, that store their materials in Canada also, without um, charging you too much in the way of taxes. Um, but if in doubt, you can go to Gamblin's website and they give a list of distributors in each country. Okay, just trying to get some of these shadow colors the right value. Kind of hard to see them sometimes till you put them down. Okay, I'm just going to go with that. I want to get her collarbone in a little bit redder. Let's get a measurement. Yep, that's about right. Okay, something like that. Okay, so jaw, so chin, cheek, jaw, cheek. Okay, I'm getting a little too thin with the paint there, which means I have to be a little more aggressive and keep color mixing. Okay, I'm just checking what people are saying on Instagram. Here's someone tuning in from Brazil. What paintbrush are you using now? Um, Sorry, I'm using a very, very cheap set of brushes from Michaels. These weren't even with their paintbrushes, they were more in the craft section, but they had a variety of different heads, and I have to say they are very cheap. The hairs keep on falling out of them. But if you want, and Michaels has some pretty decent lines of brushes that you can get for $2 or $3 a piece. Use your coupons if you want, or you can go on Dick Blick or um, Cheap Joe's, and they'll have lots of lines of inexpensive brushes. Usually, if you buy them in sets, you can get a better deal. Um, and that's what I tend to do is I'll buy sets of brushes at a time that have variety of different um, brush heads or different hair, um, softer or bristle. I was listening to someone give a demo the other day, and he said that Rosemary Brushes makes some beautiful brushes, but he doesn't have all the money that doesn't want to spend that much money, so he says he goes to Home Depot for his brushes. And then he whipped out the house painting brush that he tended to use. So to each their own. But if it works for you, then that's fine. Let's pull this shoulder up a little higher. That's good. Okay. All right. You think I would start to see some improvement here? I am about an hour and 40 minutes in. I want this to be, wanted it to be a 2-hour demo, but I may go a little bit over that. But if I can start to get some of the accents in, then maybe this will start to come together. And let's just go a little bit lighter in the bottom. That's a little bit too light. Do want to keep it on the green side. Make that pupil very black. So I'm using pure black there, maybe with a little bit of a touch of oil to make it a little bit shinier. Throw some of my lightest light blue next to the edge of her iris there. And then define the lower lid a little bit better. And then throw in some darker red for where the tear duct is. And just improve the shape of the iris a little bit with some lighter light. Sycamoose. Oh, I guess Steve was telling me where he lives in Canada. Sycamoose. It's not what's spelled like sycamoose. Yeah. Let's get that pupil up just a touch higher. And get a little bit of that darker edge to it. I painted that a little bit too wet, so let's see if it holds up. Need that. Sometimes you need the paint a little bit drier to go down right. And then the shape of her eye lid here comes up straight and then it drops down a little bit more like that. And then the lid itself, if I'm giving it proper perspective, does the same thing. So those are some pretty subtle shapes right there. Requires a little bit of concentration to get them in the right spot. But if you want the perspective to look right, you do have to have things right in relationship to each other. Okay, that's looking a little better. Let's just clean up some of these transitions a little bit. And a touch of dark here where the crease of the eyelid is. And mixed a little bit with what the eyelashes are doing. So starting to get that eye to look right, I think it will benefit greatly when I get these highlights in. So I want to be careful with those because if I put them in the wrong place or too heavy, then I do have to repaint quite a bit. Hello, Pasha. Okay, so this is one of my focal points there. If I can get it to really sing, it will be helpful. So it's starting to read. I can feel it. So I'm using a little bit of a smaller brush than I like, but I'm just trying to get a little bit more accuracy here around these um, smaller features, the iris, the pupil, the eyelashes. Make this a little softer here. Okay, so I'm gaining a little bit more control as I go and refining things a little bit more. It's taken me a while to get to this point. Just feeling out the larger shapes. Eventually I can get to some of those smaller refinements. see. My battery's starting to run a little bit low. Okay, I'm at 20%. I'm still good. Um, so, because I have the microphone in instead of my charger, I'm going to run out of charge at some point, but I think that on Instagram, my second hour will end before I run out of charge, so that's fine. Let's get a little bit of darker red right here on the underside of the nose. These are some real delicate shapes here, and so I've been painting back and forth until I kind of get the feel of them. Let's get a little bit of bluish green going right here. Shadow. It's like one of those areas where you don't see it until you look really hard. Okay, going back and forth a little bit of the profile of the chin. I think that is getting closer. And I'm going to cut the corner a little bit on her jawline. Then want to make sure I got all of this lined up correctly to get the head tilted in the right direction. Seems like a minor thing. Really, the shape of the head is probably more important than getting her features right in terms of likeness and the overall sense of the anatomy. Need to go a lot lighter in this spot, so getting a lot of white and yellow down. Okay. This just requires a great deal of patience until you get it to where it needs to be. Going to bring that eyebrow forward a little bit. And a little more light in here in the cheek. Sorry, got a little quiet there for a bit, but that's okay. Just means I'm concentrating. So we're getting up on 2 hours here. I've will probably go until um, I've run out on Instagram. I may just go a little bit longer on YouTube, but after that, I'm going to take it offline. Um, I would say this webcam is working to great effect. I'm happy with how it's doing, and I will probably retire my phone for doing YouTube videos and use the webcam where I can. Okay, Steve says that Sicamous, it's a Native American name. It's actually the houseboat capital of Canada and only has about 4,000 people living here and triples in size in the summer. Nice place to live. And I'll be going here probably about 10 more minutes or so. Just to give you guys an idea. But I think this is coming out nicely so far. It's taken a while to get it to where it is. Probably should switch to my bigger brush here now that I'm away from the finer details. Okay, being a little bit brave with this brush. see, I think my Instagram will probably end in the next 5 minutes or so. So, because the time will run out on that. Okay, let's see if I can get some accents here that will make this feel a little more finished. Okay. Um, Live and okay. Well, hey, Instagram still seems to be going, but is it giving me a clock yet? Nope. just a little bit. And a little bit lower here. Okay, it's still let me go live on Instagram. I guess it hasn't been quite an hour yet, but it seemed like it. Okay, so it looks like my Instagram ended. That's fine. I did 2 hours on there. And I am going to just do a little bit longer here. Um, while I have a few people here, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you're not already so that you get um, notifications when I go live. And um, yeah, and thanks for coming out to watch me and supporting my effort here. And hopefully you enjoyed the demo and learned something from it. And I'm just here at home painting away, so figure might as well just turn a camera on it. And hopefully people get something out of it. Anyway, if you feel like you do, give me a thumbs up. If you have any comments, I encourage you to leave them after I've ended the session. That way they are part of the regular video comment as opposed to being part of the discussion during the live video. And I thank you all for coming out and have a great night. And I will see you all next week. Thank you. Let me see. How do I end this thing? Don't know how to do that.